What is a safety plan?
Well, safety planning is actually a process within gender-based violence case management, which includes the identification and formation of goals and strategies that the survivor can use to bring positive change to her situation. It is a structured process where a survivor and a caseworker talk through the survivor's current situation, the risks she faces from the perpetrator, and to see how to mitigate harm in the event of further violence and abuse. The survivor and the caseworker then use the safety planning tool to come up with a personalized plan that the survivor thinks may be helpful to her in her present situation. The plan is regularly updated through the case management process.
Who needs a safety plan and why?
Safety plans can be used with women and girls who are experiencing violence and abuse. They can be particularly relevant to female survivors of intimate partner violence and can be useful in cases where the survivor is still living with or is in contact with the perpetrator or being abused by a perpetrator whom she has attempted to leave. Safety plans are important for several reasons, including but not limited to: 1, helping a survivor assess the current level of safety and to identify the specific risks or threats to their safety. 2, talk through the circumstances in which the survivor is in most danger and talk through strategies to mitigate against the threats and to seek or how to reduce the severe harm or lethality. And 3, to identify what resources the survivor already possesses, recognize and affirm that she's the one best placed to understand her situation, and help her develop a realistic plan for safety that incorporates her resources.
Who is involved in the safety planning process?
The survivor is at the center of the process. She is best placed to know her situation, the risks she faces, the coping strategies that have worked for her in the past and present, the negative coping mechanisms or strategies that have not been effective, and who or what is needed to support her safety in crisis situations when the survivor uses violence or abuse. The caseworker's role then is to listen and work with the woman or girl survivor to help guide her through the process, using the tools to help her identify and assess her current situation, the risks she faces, ways in which harm could be mitigated, and also to provide the survivor with accurate information and support. The caseworker's technical advisor or supervisor is also key in ensuring that all caseworkers on their team are trained effectively in how to do safety planning with a survivor, including using key tools. Their role also is to provide regular, weekly supportive supervision sessions where the quality of the case management, including safety planning with the survivor, is reviewed and checked.
When is a safety plan needed?
Safety plans are needed when the survivors are at risk of further violence and abuse being perpetrated against them. Safety plans should be conducted for all survivors who give informed consent or assent to develop a plan. Safety plans are particularly applicable and relevant to women and girls who are experiencing intimate partner violence or violence in the home. They are also especially important and relevant for women and girls who are planning to live an abusive, intimate partner relationship, as this is often particularly risky for them when there is a likelihood of the perpetrator escalating the violence increases or sometimes with deadly results.
How is safety planning done?
Safety planning is a collaborative process and discussion between the survivor and the caseworker. The caseworker should use their active listening skills to tune into the survivor's needs and wishes for her safety in the present and also in the future. Safety planning should take place in a private, confidential, and comfortable place and should be conducted at the survivor's pace. Safety planning should be conducted after the intake and assessment steps of case management. If there is a likelihood that you will only see a survivor once and you have identified her as being at risk of further violence, caseworker should then always ask the survivor if she would like to conduct a safety plan in the same session. This will help ensure she does not leave the session without having at least some emergency contact or service provider, and at best a full safety plan developed that she thinks can work for her.
If I'm a caseworker and I'm not sure how to do safety planning, what should I do?
You should talk to your technical supervisor and seek their guidance and support as to how to develop the safety plans. The Gender-Based Violence Case Management Guidelines explain the safety planning process and what a safety plan is. You should also reference them or on the GBV Responders website. The GBV case management trainings will also go over what the safety planning is as a step of case management and why it is needed, how it can help the survivor, and how to go about it. So if you have not already done a case management training, you should do that before you do any further GBV case management. The IRC and other GBV service providers often provide interagency GBV case management trainings. Contact your local GBV subcluster to further get information and support.
What are some of the key risks that I should consider when supporting survivors experiencing intimate partner violence?
Well, from a caseworker's perspective, one of the biggest risks or traps we can fall into is to not actively include the survivor in the process and recognizing that she is the expert in knowing her situation and the risks she faces. We must always seek her consent and actively listen to her needs, what she tells us, and ensure that we have accurate information to give her that will help her make informed decisions about her next steps to develop the content of her safety plan. For the survivor herself, well, we know that these are all indicators of further violence or abuse. These are the fact that he, the perpetrator, has already or ever perpetrated violence against her. For example, if he has used weapons against her in assault, or has ever used sexual violence, for example, rape or sexual assault, this elevates her risks. 2, if she is pregnant, she may also be at increased risk of violence, both for herself and for the fetus. They are both vulnerable to impact of violence. Also, if she recently gave birth, her vulnerability may increase as she is recovering from the delivery. 3, if the survivor has disability or identified functional difficulty, she may also be at additional risk because in most cases, she will face additional environmental barriers in accessing support, services, or other protective factors. 4, if the perpetrator is jealous, stalking her, harassing or controlling her, monitoring her movements, and that kind of behavior. And lastly, if the survivor has ever threatened to kill himself or her or others, then this must be taken seriously as an indicator of further violence or possibility of escalating violence.
What if I'm a caseworker supporting an adolescent girl? What do I need to consider when helping her to develop a safety plan?
For adolescent girls, you should factor for, or rather, assess their capacity to give informed consent or assent, depending on their capacity, their maturity, and their ability to know about and understand the information and services that you're offering them. For example, in many countries, married girls or older adolescents may also be legally able to provide consent in lieu of or in addition to their parents or legal caregivers' consent. Parents and caregivers may typically be asked to provide their informed consent for girls to participate in the case management process. Informed assent would be given when a girl expresses her willingness to participate in services. Informed assent can be for younger girls who are legally and developmentally young, too young to give the informed consent, but they are old enough to understand and agree to participate in services. Informed assent should be given in addition to informed consent from the caregiver or parent. You should also consider identifying the trusted people in her life that she can turn to for support in an emergency. For example, a member of the extended family, a teacher, or a friend. Care should be taken to protect the survivor in the event that the perpetrator is the parent or caregiver. It is also important to consider her developmental and support needs and factor them into the safety plan. As a girl, she may have less access to financial resources. This should also be considered as part of her support and safety planning. As with all survivors, going over the safety plan until it is very clear is very important, as is respecting and listening to what the survivor is telling you, the caseworker, about her situation.
Is a safety plan a one-time tool?
No, a safety plan can be reviewed and updated with the survivor multiple times. Whenever a survivor requests that her plan be updated, it should be updated. Also, caseworkers should revisit and discuss the safety plan at each of her follow-up sessions so as to assess for any new threats or risks to her safety or any situation changes. For example, if she leaves the perpetrator but he has found out where she has moved to, and talk with her on the current safety needs so that the plan can be revised and updated accordingly. If there has been improvement in her situation, a review of her safety plan can also be a powerful affirmation and acknowledgement of her strengths, her capacities and abilities, which have often been continually undermined and eroded by the language and behavior of the perpetrator.